This week, a look at the ghostly creatures in the manga work of Rumiko Takahashi. Patrick will be our guide. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. Deconstructing Comics earns a bit of money from your purchase that helps us keep the show going. We really appreciate your support. This is Tim.
Hi, this is Patrick.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo on Skype with Patrick. How you doing?
I'm good. It just got chilly here in Kumamoto. It had been a little bit warmer.
Yeah, you're a little bit further south than we are in Tokyo.
That's right.
And of course, Patrick was last on, in episode 619, which came out March 6th, talking about cowboys and ninjas in comics.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, I was thinking it was maybe May, but no, we must have recorded it in February. One of the things that you talked about in that episode was Tezuka's Captain Ken, which, I don't know, I got it on Comixology and it sat there for a long time, as my purchases tend to do. I finally read it and then I discovered, there's a second volume, which I bought and have not read yet. But yeah, it was interesting. And I don't know, the thing about something like some of Tezuka's stuff, it looks so cartoony, but some of it is so serious. And, a lot of people get killed cruelly in that comic. But it looks so kind of cutesy art-wise. It's a strange contrast.
Well, he tackles all the serious themes, and his style adapted to what was popular at the time. So like when Gekiga became popular, he developed his own Gekiga style because basically I feel he didn't want to be left behind and wanted to compete at the edge. So he has more serious looking styles, but I think that you'll find that with a lot of Japanese comics, it's the cuteness is just stylistic and it has nothing to do with the content.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we talked about Gekiga on other episodes, but just for people who don't know, can you explain what that means?
Without going into the whole rigmarole, it's basically there was a group, Tezuka, his cartoony style became de rigueur. I mean, it was like so popular. Everybody basically learned off of him and emulated him. And there were a group of guys who, it's not so much that they didn't want to draw in that style, it's that they wanted to make comics that weren't all ages, that weren't for kids. They wanted to tackle more adult themes. And so the style that they used to draw in was a little bit, if you look at the early stuff, it looks like, I don't know, like Gogo 13. Basically, all the guys look like Gogo 13. They have these big bushy eyebrows and like these big square Bruce Timm bodies. Mm-hmm. And but it's it tends to be more realistic as far as like proportions and backgrounds and this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a twofer. It was not just the look, but also they wanted to attack more adult themes that they felt weren't being handled with comics.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So now you've made several different comics presentations, you said, at the Comics Museum there in Kumamoto.
That's right.
And so we're going to look at another one of them today, listen to or discuss with Patrick, however you want to say it. Rumiko Takahashi's yokai, or kind of ghostly characters.
Yes, I think I titled my presentation English Rumiko Takahashi's Mystical Monsters.
Okay. And I've read a fair amount of her stuff. I read all of Inuyasha, although those last 10 volumes or so didn't really need to exist. Um, and I read Namma, which was great at first, and I don't know. I wasn't satisfied with the ending of that one. I started reading Rinne. I never finished it, but I was a little. I mean, I thought it was fine, but I think the fact that it was an episodic thing rather than serialized like the others. It was so episodic that there wasn't much of a through line to it, and so I just kind of could drop off wherever I wanted to, kind of.
Well, I have to say that, like though I am a fan, I'm not like a thorough expert on all her stuff because I'm like you. I got into several of her series when they were just starting out and they really had that momentum, and then I kind of fell by the wayside as they started to drag or whatever. The only one that I honestly ever I couldn't wait for the next volume was her first big hit, which was Urusei Yatsura.
Yeah, I've never read that. I know that it started to come out once in English and never finished. I saw that there's supposed to be a reprint coming out.
Well, it was actually it was my introduction into manga, basically. I mean, it wasn't the first Japanese manga that I bought, but it was the first one that I understood. And the first one, and it basically, I learned Japanese through Urusei Yatsura. And it's a great and also a terrible comic for learning because so many questions, because everybody talks a different Japanese.
Okay.
Every single character. Everyone. They talk in different levels of politeness. They talk different levels of, class almost. Like one guy talks like a samurai, and like Lum, the main. Well, I consider her the main character. Apparently, officially, the main character is the guy, Ataru Moroboshi.
But yeah, she's the one that everybody knows.
Yes, yes.
The sexy alien.
And the one that everybody loves. Her mom speaks in mahjong tiles. And her dad, she speaks like a Sendai dialect because that's where Rumiko Takahashi's from.
Okay.
And her dad speaks in Kobe dialect, and her cousin speaks in Osaka dialect, and it's just so I had lots of questions, because
dictionary's useless.
Yes, well, and everybody says you a completely different way, like they're saying all the different levels of politeness, from rude to super polite to archaic to high school girl to tough boy. It was like I had a lot of questions. Let's just put it that way. And I happened my second year of I should go through my how I kind of fell in love with Urusei Yatsura.
Okay.
After I give you a brief rundown of Rumiko Takahashi.
Okay.
So she was born in 1957 in Niigata, which is north of Tokyo. I'm not a geography guy, so don't look it up. She grew up reading her older brother's comics, so she got she was into his tastes. She liked boys' comics basically, and from middle school she started making comics and sending them out to try to get them published. In college, she wherever she went, she basically would form these manken groups, these let's study comics, let's make comics groups. Basically dojin, the fanzines. She, made these clubs to make fanzines. And trivia, her first pen name in one of these was Kemo Kobiru, which is a really weird name.
Yeah.
Like Kobiru is kind of Rumiko backwards. I don't know where Kemo comes from, but anyway, yeah, she was a fanzine creator first, which I think most of her generation did that. Before they went pro. They did, like zines first. Because even Matsumoto Reiji, I mean, him and his friends, they did dojin before they went pro. Well, actually, he went pro first, but anyway, digressing. Yeah. So in college, she became a protege of Kazuo Koike of Lone Wolf and Cub fame. He immediately recognized that she had the ability to go pro, and she won like the new artist prize for Shogakukan when she sent in Katte na Yatsura, which is basically a prototype for Urusei Yatsura. And yeah, and then, she started Urusei Yatsura and became super popular.
And she was only like 21, right?
Yeah, she was really young. So, so that's it in a nutshell. She went on to make several popular series. You have Maison Ikoku, and you have the Mermaid series. And then her next big hit was, Maison Ikoku was actually a pretty big hit. It turned into a TV show, and Urusei Yatsura became an animated show. Ranma Half was
an anime.
Huge hit and became an animated show. And of course, after that was Inuyasha, and after that was Rinne. And now they're almost like 10 years apart, these, and now her new series is called Mao, and it's apparently very Inuyasha-like.
Yeah, well, looking at kind of the concept of it, it sounds a lot like Inuyasha or Rinne. Although, of course, Rinne was more of a comedy-ish series, and this looks more serious. But the kind of concepts of the characters sound really similar to Rinne.
Yes, I would agree. I would still like Urusei Yatsura is still my, absolute favorite. It was really my introduction to the language of comics, like Japanese comics. And, of course, her style was, I think, all the first like American creators who were trying to emulate Japanese style. I mean, she was basically the one that they flocked to. Like Ninja High School was, one of the earliest, and that looks so much like her style. Do you remember Ninja High School?
I don't know if I ever saw that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Ben Dunn. So it was the first like American-made Japanese style,
okay,
comic that I'd ever seen. And at the time I remember kicking myself, like, why didn't I do something like that? But so for me, like Urusei Yatsura, it was still going on when I came across. I would visit New York to see my dad once in a while, and I would go up to the Kinokuniya that they had in Manhattan, and I found 4 volumes of basically they were bilingual versions of Urusei Yatsura used to teach terrible English to poor, unsuspecting Japanese.
Okay.
so surprised they didn't have a native speaker or an instructor better. Check.
Yeah, you would think. Well, that's true a lot of times with things written in English in Japan.
Yeah, some people are very confident in their English abilities. Do not want to be checked.
Yes.
So that gave me my first, I was still studying Japanese. I could read hiragana. So if you can read hiragana and katakana, basically you can read any Shonen Sunday, Shonen Jump comic. Whether you understand it or not, that's a different story. But you can sound out.
Yeah, those are the
everything.
Two phonetic systems in Japanese. But
yeah. So all the kanji, all the Chinese characters, they all have pronunciation little guides next to them in Shonen Jump and Shonen Sunday series comics. So I was able to read it, and I'm still a lot better at reading kanji than I am writing.
Yeah. I'm not as good at writing kanji as I used to be. But
I think that goes for every living person in Japan.
Right, yeah. Computers have taken away the incentive to learn to write kanji.
So true. So that was kind of the first time where I actually had a real grasp on who characters were in a Japanese comic, thanks to that translation. Mm-hmm. Because there was only the Viz comics weren't out yet. So then I, with that grasp of what was going on, I could understand, or I could pick up the Japanese a lot faster.
Okay, who was publishing manga in English at that time?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't publishing.
Japanese.
It was a Japanese
one.
Yeah. So I was just buying the Japanese volumes piecemeal whenever I could get a hold of them, until I finally had all 34.
Right. You mentioned Viz, and that threw me off because I was thinking, okay, well, who else was publishing English manga? But yeah, okay.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, at the time there was nobody.
Here and there something would come out. Didn't Marvel put out some Lone Wolf and Cub in the 80s?
Well, Akira was put out while I was still in the U.S. So Epic put out an English version of Akira. Viz was doing it in the 80s. I think Lone Wolf and Cub might have been later.
Because I remember that was pushed by Frank Miller, because that was one of his favorites.
Yes, he did several covers for those versions, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
At that time they did Urusei Yatsura, which they just called Lum. They had Kamui Gaiden. They had Mai the Psychic Girl.
Okay.
And Area 88. I think those were the ones that they had put out in English. And I bought whatever came out. I was still in high school, but I was, What's funny is that the Mai the Psychic Girl was drawn by Ryuichi Ikegami, and his style was, everybody who saw Mai the Psychic Girl went nuts over it, because his style was so gorgeous. And actually, Rumiko Takahashi saw his art in a magazine called Calm, and she didn't know who it was, but it had a big impact on her. So he kind of inspired her as well.
Okay. So as far as yokai, or what did you call them in English?
I just said mysterious monsters.
Mysterious monsters. Okay. So I don't think. I mean, I've never read it, but I don't think Urusei Yatsura has any of those. They're mainly in Inuyasha and Ninne.
Well, there you'd be wrong.
Okay.
Because in Urusei Yatsura, she has all the classic yokai.
Okay.
So, for example, Lum herself, she's completely based on Japanese oni,
Mm-hmm.
which is often translated as devil, and because they're hell related and they have horns. But I actually been thinking about whether or not that's a good idea to translate them as devil
I've
because
heard it as ogre.
yes, I've seen it as ogre too.
Yeah, devil is pretty loaded in English.
Right, right. And so Lum she's a oni,
Mm-hmm.
and my favorite character, which was Oyuki, she's kind of a snow goddess. She's based on the Yuki Onna,
Okay.
and let's see who else we got here. Yeah, you have Kappa showing up. You have Tengu. You have a hot Tengu, a sexy Tengu.
That's kind of hard to imagine. Yeah, Tengu for listeners is a character with like a long nose and isn't it kind of a red face?
There's different versions of them. You have the angry face with the long nose. Yeah, that's a red face, and they also have like crow Tengu, which look a little different.
Okay.
They're apparently the progenitors of ninjutsu. Is Tengu passed on ninja skills to humans?
Okay.
So that's one. And you have a couple of different foxes. So foxes in Japanese folklore tend to have mystical properties. They can change into things. They can, change into people. They can disappear. One of the foxes is actually one of my favorite characters. It's a little bitty, cute, chibi fox character who falls in love with one of the girls in the series called Shinobu. She's like the second lead or the second female lead. And so this fox just like all his stories are kind of wordless and he just kind of pines for Shinobu. It's just a really sweet little story whenever he shows up. Like you mentioned that was it Rinne that you said it was very capsulized,
episodic. Mm-hmm.
Urusei Yatsura is very episodic.
Okay.
It switches, focus on different characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the other series are somewhat, but there is also a kind of larger story running through it, where, with Rinne, there didn't seem to be that.
Urusei Yatsura didn't really do that till like the very last volume, where it's one long story. But yeah, you have Tanuki, who are also, shapeshifters, and you have Bakeneko, which are basically like monster cats.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually two versions of that. And you have a yokai which looks kind of like a kappa, but it's like it makes it rain. And that's a really touching story. The one with it's called the Ame Furashi, so basically like a rainmaker.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Urusei Yatsura has these classic yokai. And then when you get into Ranma, not so much. You have, again, another Bakeneko, monster cat, which causes Ranma to freak out because he's afraid of cats. And he turns into a cat to escape his fear of cats. He doesn't actually turn into a cat. He thinks he's a cat. So I think that's interesting. It's kind of a form of lycanthropy, the original insanity where people thought they had turned into animals, which is basically what werewolves are based on.
By the way, I just checked here. Yeah, actually, Viz has put out 4 volumes of it recently with new translation. And under the title Urusei Yatsura, not Lum.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, just recently. And number 5 is available for pre-order on their site.
Cool. I don't know how it is. Like, I know that uh, translators do a really good job of bridging the gaps, but I still, because I've mostly been exposed to this material in Japanese, it's always a little bit weird
Yeah, I
when I
can
read them in
imagine.
English.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's just like there's a character to Japanese voices and animation, I think there's a character to the Japanese language that is shifts a little bit in it when it is translated into another language.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's just one of those things. It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
So what you mentioned is totally true. They once Inuyasha starts, it's all monsters. But apparently, Takahashi said that she didn't want to be bound by trying to do all this research for historical yokai, and
Mm.
so she just decided to kind of make them up as she went along, which is good. It's good. I mean, there was a lot. She had some really creepy stuff. There's still some like callbacks to traditional Japanese monsters,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, I think it afforded her a lot more creativity.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh, some of the Inuyasha stories, I have to admit, they really freaked me out. Like
Mm.
I don't necessarily consider myself easily scared by comics, but like I don't know that's first of all the first one, the centipede lady, man,
Oh, yeah, I remember
that
that.
was pretty creepy. But
Mm-hmm.
then like when the Thunder Brothers show up in Inuyasha, the one guy, the one brother, Hiten, he puts his fist through this poor snake lady's face. And I'm still traumatized by that one DC comic where Superboy Prime punches through somebody's face.
Mm.
Because I really thought they were going to go for, hey, let's make it a nice world again, and they went full punch through the face. So I was like, what? Anyway,
Mm.
uh, they have this one particular yokai in Inuyasha early on called Tatari Mokke, and it's been translated as Soul Piper Demon. And this is an actual like legend from Aomori, which is basically the soul of young children that have died early. And but in this particular story, it looks like a big kind of ball with a feathery tail and these big eyes that are slit, really, like the eyes are like almost closed.
Mm-hmm.
But it keeps saying, once my eyes open fully, then all bets are off. So, you do what you got to do. And basically, Akane has to save the soul of this one girl, or she's going to be dragged to hell. When this thing opens its eyes all the way. That's pretty tense.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a good bit of storytelling there. The actual original yokai, they say that these spirits of these young children, they actually their spirits settle into the bodies of owls sometimes, and the call of the owl is actually the crying of these infant spirits.
Mm.
If that won't keep you up, nothing will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what really, like, I think one thing I was happy to see in Inuyasha was the creepy, creepy spiders. Like the human heads with the spider legs and
Mm-hmm.
spider bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I was so happy to see that because Takahashi is a big fan of Daijiro Morohoshi, who is a comic artist who does very spiritual, fantastical kinds of dark horror. He does Cthulhu type of stuff. He actually riffs on Cthulhu in some of his works. Um, he uh, he had a series called Yokai Hunter,
Hmm.
and this guy is worth like 3 episodes of a podcast. He's so fascinating. He's so fascinating. But anyway, we had this series called Yokai Hunter, and in that series, in the very first story, it takes place in one of those key-shaped tombs, that are in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
called Kofun. And when I finally saw his comic, and I saw the Kofun that he had drawn, it's like an hour away from where I live now.
Oh wow.
And they have like a model of it near the Kumamoto Castle. There's a museum near there, and so I recognized it immediately. And I also recognized the fact that story was turned into a movie in 1988 called Goblin Hunter Hiruko. That's the U.S. title, or the English title.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, you have these creepy heads with these spider legs. And that movie scared the bejesus out of me. I didn't even know I had bejesus in me until that movie scared it out of me. So, but Morohoshi, she named her main character of Urusei Yatsura, Ataru Moroboshi, after him.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that connection,
Okay.
which I wanted to bring up. Other Inuyasha moments that I thought were especially creepy, I think, was the kind of zombie characters that were half made of clay, and they looked like the Haniwa dolls, these old traditional dolls you would find with the empty eye sockets and stuff. Oh man, that was creepy. And these are a lot creepier if you live in Japan for some reason. If you have some familiarity with those spaces and those things, it somehow the creepiness takes on a much
I can see how that
level.
would be. If I lived in the States and had never been here and saw that, it might be too foreign to really be scary.
Well, what you just said right there is interesting, because you just said too foreign to be scary. So Oni and also those spider guys, which were called like dirt spiders, Tsuchigumo, they are both, apparently based on representations of foreign peoples. Onis are hairy. They have curly hair, and they're bigger, and they're scary. And these dirt spiders are, they, like foreigners, have shorter torsos, longer arms, longer legs, and apparently, according to some folk literature based in Kyushu, that Tsuchigumo is based on interactions with foreigners.
Huh. Okay. Well, and of course, Nagasaki for a while was the only place that any foreigners could be seen in Japan, like during
That's right.
Edo times.
And where I live in Kumamoto, we're just a stone's throw away. I mean, you can either take a ferry for an hour, or you can drive for an hour and a half, or 2 hours maybe, and you can basically get there. But yeah, it was really interesting how she keeps coming back to tying in things that have seem to have an essential Japaneseness to them. She loves history. I mean, several of her stories, they go back in time to different periods in Japan's history. The new series goes back to the Taisho era, which isn't that long ago, but not like Inuyasha, which I think goes back to the Warring States period.
Right, yeah, before Edo.
Well, what I just kind of brushing up for this particular podcast, what I was reminded of is, like, back in the late 80s, well, actually mid 80s, I guess, There was a series of original video animations. In other words, animated movies that didn't go to the theater, they went straight to video, based on her short works.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was called Fire Tripper, and it was my absolute favorite. And in this one, a girl, whenever she touches flame or is engulfed in flame, she travels in time back to the Warring States period. And then if she hits flame there, she travels back to the present. And so it's definitely a precursor to Ramma as far as like the elemental properties. It's fire versus water. But also it's precursor to Inuyasha about going, but it's also a love story. And it's got an interesting twist to it that is definitely a nice science fiction time travel kind of twist. So if you have a way to track down either the comic version or the animated version of the 3 animated shows based on her stuff that came out at that time, that's the one that I like the most.
Okay. By the way, I should mention, so Warring States period is late 1500s, and Taisho is 1912 to 1926. So
there you go.
Coming up, some signature aspects of a Takahashi manga and more. I'm continuing to republish classic episodes of Deconstructing Comics in reverse order, unlocked by our patrons' generous support. Last week, while there was no new episode, I did put up episode 77 from May 28, 2007, in which Brandon and I discussed Art Spiegelman's Mouse. This week's classic episode from May 21st, 2007, features reviews of Houdini the Handcuff King by Jason Lutz and Nick Bertozzi, and 24-Hour Comics Day highlights from 2006. We're now back to the stretch in Deconstructing Comics history where Brandon and I were the hosts for every episode, sitting in his office as we recorded. The classic episodes can be found on our Facebook and Twitter feeds by clicking on the earliest months listed on the left sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com or in publicly available posts on our Patreon page. Check out all our goals and help us reach them at patreon.com/deconcomics.
I crave superheroic content. Let's see what's on.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Nah, don't think so.
I'm Batman.
Not really what I'm looking for.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman!
Absolutely not.
This is Robin the Boy Wonder. I'm Batman.
Aha, now that's more like it.
If you see Adam West as the one true Batman, then this is the podcast for you. Tune in every other Thursday on your favorite podcast source to hear Tim and Paul discuss the 1966 series and everything connected with it. What's the podcast called?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
By the way, do you know, has Takahashi ever talked, like, in interviews about, like, what's so interesting to her about, these yokai? Because they seem to show up in a number of her series.
Well, she has given lots of interviews about her works, and I can't pretend that I've read that many. I've read the ones that I've got a hold of. And, apparently she's just always been fascinated by the weird and the monstrous. Mm-hmm. And so, she basically, that's, I think, the whole appeal of Urusei Yatsura is that she turned a monster into the main character. Now, here's a bit of trivia. Lum was not supposed to be a regular character.
Huh.
She's in the first episode. She's not in the second episode. It was supposed to focus on the boy and his misadventures, but she was so popular.
Yeah, but he's not a chick in a bikini, so
yeah. That's right. Lum was so popular that that she brought her back, and kind of like the origins of Popeye, right?
Mm-hmm. Or
Popeye,
or I don't know. Opus was a minor character at first.
That's right. That's right.
Snoopy was not meant to be the main character in Peanuts.
Yep, but in Japan, that's what they think that the whole strip is called.
It's called Snoopy in Japan.
Yeah, I have to keep explaining that like forever.
Yeah, no. Charlie Brown is the main character.
Yeah, they're like, Charlie who? The round-headed kid. They actually get that. They get that. Oh, the round-headed kid.
Right. Well, of course, in Japan, Peanuts is more of a decoration than a story.
Very good point. Very good point. Very good point. When I was giving my talk about the reason that it was Takahashi, like Rumiko Takahashi and yokai, was because I gave the talk in the summer. And in the summer, you're supposed to talk about scary stuff because it gives people chills and cools them down when it's the hottest.
Right. There are always like kind of scary shows on TV in August in Japan.
That's right. That's right. And so going through it, I was really, because I'm a big werewolf fanatic. I love werewolves. And I saw Inuyasha as kind of a reverse werewolf, like he's actually, he's half human, half yokai, but sometimes he goes full human, like a reverse werewolf. And I find that kind of thing fascinating. I find it fascinating that it's his what people argue about what to call kids who are in mixed culture marriages or products of mixed cultures, or I think I like the word hafu as it is in Japanese, not half really as in English, but there's a group of people who are hafu, and they reclaimed that word to represent themselves because it does a good job of it. Some people say mixed, some people say whatever.
I've heard double.
Double, yeah.
Some people don't like half. They're not half anything. They've got two cultures, so they're double.
Well, I mean, I think that's valid because my daughter, until she reaches a certain age, she is a full citizen of both Japan and America. So that's definitely double. And but like genetically, we're all half our mom and half our dad.
Yeah.
So Inuyasha, as being like between humanity and the monster world, he's a bridge, he acts a bridge, and he ends up being more powerful because of it, and I think that's kind of what he has this super powerful father, and I think that's kind of what the father was trying to get through to him, because he himself feels very insecure about his not being a full yokai, and all the yokai give him crap about it, poor Rudolph.
With his shiny nose.
I know. It's like, yeah. So, but I think that's the interesting part for me, because in her Mermaid series, which is her only really fully horror series, it's a fascinating series. I don't know if you know about this.
I didn't know about it until I was reading about her on Wikipedia for this podcast.
Well, the Mermaid series, you have basically mer people who are who live a very long time. They live forever, basically. And if humans eat their flesh, then one out of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, only one person will be able to take on that, the same properties and live forever. other people, they turn into grotesque half man, half fish things. So in that series, the Hafu characters are their genetic abnormalities, their, what's the word in movies and such whenever something is born that should never have been born? I'm blanking.
Oh, like an abomination or something.
Abomination. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an abomination.
That's right. So they're treated like, abominations, and they're wild, animalistic, mindless killing machines. So, so it's interesting, these two kind of takes. The mermaid story is much older, but it's been more recently turned into a short television animated series, I believe. But it's really interesting, this series, because you have the one human who ate the mermaid flesh on a lark and ended up living through, hundreds and hundreds of years of Japanese history. And he's, of course, lonely. He's looking for a way to turn back to human, but he ends up coming across a girl who was forced to eat the mermaid flesh to turn her immortal. And the reason that these immortal humans are useful to the mermaids is that if the mermaids eat them, they, even though they live forever, they age. But if they eat a person who is immortal, they it's like a fountain of youth for them. They look all young again. So it's it's an interesting series. It's very short, but it's cool.
Okay, yeah, she had several shorter series that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, and there's a lot of. She's very good at comedy. She's very good at slapstick, and the timing on the page. You just catch yourself laughing. Because her timing is just perfect.
Yeah, the first 20 or so volumes of Dhamma I thought were really, really funny.
Yes.
After that, it kind of started getting to be a retread. I think with that, and maybe even more so with Inuyasha, I suspect that the publisher forced her to keep it going longer than maybe she really wanted to.
Well, the Japanese nirvana, like capitalistic nirvana, is that if you can make the same thing again and again and again with very little, change, and people still eat it up, that's perfection. But in her case, she really pads them out to 40 or 50 books. And, I like series that are 10 books long, that have an arc, like the one arc, and is, so, yeah, it's very daunting. But I think she's very good at judging. Even though she's doing similar stories, she's still kind of updating the language. She's updating her style. Her style is different, even though you can tell it's her. The model is a little different. Like the balance of her faces is not the same. It's almost a little off. I mean, I find the ones for Rinne, I find her art to have gone downhill. From my perspective, but the hair and everything has been updated to current trends, and I think she's still kind of keeping it fresh for the current market. So she's good at that. That last year she got her Eisner.
I think I did see something about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite cool.
Have you read any of the new one, Mao?
I bought the Sunday, the Shonen Sunday, the weekly that had the first episode in it, and that's it. And I don't. It didn't really give me a big enough chunk to tell whether or not I was gonna try to continue. And also, my wife told me, you're not gonna buy it every week, and you're gonna end up just wanting to read it in book form anyway. And I'm like, yes, you're right. But I had this tradition, because I actually bought the first Ranma when it came out on the weekly Sunday. And I had actually had a year's worth, like that first year's worth of Sundays in a trunk in my room. And I was using Ranma to continue my Japanese studies that I had started with Urusei Yatsura. In fact, when I was in my second year of college, I went to a very small college in Brevard called, guess what? Brevard College.
Good name for it.
Yep. And there just happened to be a huge influx of Japanese students. Like, I think to a total of 2,000 people, there were 2,000 students. I think there was some like 200 Japanese students. Wow. So I really got enmeshed, because you're on top of the mountains, not a whole lot to do. So I really buckled down, and I asked a lot of questions and bugged my poor Japanese fellow students about every damn thing. And I tried to put together a guide, like how to read Japanese comics, and it ended up being kind of like a grammar and guide to Japanese visual language. And then when I got back to Atlanta the next year, the magazine called Mangajin had come out.
I remember it.
And I was like, damn it. That's kind of what I want to do. What's hilarious is Mangajin came out of Atlanta, and Kazuko Ashizawa, who did the covers, she was a friend of mine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had no idea. So, yeah, that was kind of another one of those, damn it. I was on the right track, but, I gave up too easily. But actually, though, making that guide definitely cemented a foundation in Japanese grammar for myself. So it wasn't a waste. It got me to where I am now, for sure. So,
okay, well,
that's basically all the all the stuff that I have. If I was going to mention anything else, I would mention that because I'm a sound effects guy, I study comic book sound effects. I want to mention that some of her sound effects are particularly distinctive. One is the chudong sound effect, and she's famous for it. If you look up chudong in
what sound does it signify?
It's usually like a big explosive impact. Like dong is usually used for big booms, but the chu in front of it is kind of what gives it. Chu is usually used for like a kissing sound or something, and so it's kind of a weird mix,
Okay, well, it's kind of like a crack-a-doom or something.
Yes, except for a kissing sound.
Yeah. Like smooch doom.
yeah, like pucker thoom.
Did you read very much Rinne?
I really didn't. Read that much. Again, I bought the first chapter when it came out, and then immediately forgot to buy the next chapter.
Because I've got, I don't remember how many, maybe about 15 English volumes of it, and I read at least 10 of them. And actually, well, the reason I fell off of it partly was that, when I was working at the military base and I used to get comics sent to me from a comic service in the States,
right.
And when I quit working there and stayed in Japan, that became pretty expensive shipping-wise. And so I bailed out from that. But I don't think, at least not at the time, I don't think Ninne was available on Comixology. Maybe it is now. But I was several volumes behind anyway, so I didn't really look into it, and I just never read those other volumes.
That kind of thing happens. It's like, that's happened to me so many times in my like collecting life, in my nerd fandom collecting life. It's like I was really into Magic the Gathering when it immediately, like when it first came out. Like the first pack that I bought had a Black Lotus, which is like considered the most expensive card of the whole shebang. Mm-hmm. And then when the second expansion came out, I was dead broke. And so I have these huge gaps in my collection because, just financial stuff. And the same thing, like after I moved to Kumamoto, I tried to do one of those, do you know D'Agostini?
Oh yeah, I've seen TV commercials for that company.
They do like these weekly or monthly, whatever things will come out. I tried to build a Millennium Falcon that was like 1.5 feet big, or it's like almost 2 feet, across. But bit by bit, they send you, and I did it for like, I guess 15 weeks, and I'd still had only made that little cockpit part, and then I think the Kumamoto earthquake happened, and I, was broke again, but this time with a family and a house. Yeah. So that was the first thing to go, was the weekly subscription to trying to build a Millennium Falcon.
I see. So you got a cockpit anyway.
I had a cockpit. Yeah.
So just put Han and Chewie in there, and
that's right.
And they'll be good.
That's right. Nail it to my wall or something.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on podcast again.
No, it's my pleasure. It's we got to do this more often. Sometimes I've been, because last year I spent, I don't know, I guess I did about 7 different lectures at the Manga Museum. And this year I'd mostly been working on my research paper that I sent in to the manga research journal that's here. And I still have yet to hear back on whether or not it's been accepted. But that's been my whole year, working on that research paper. So I haven't done... Well, I did one lecture, comics related. I did an 80-minute lecture of the 80-year history of Marvel Comics. And to Japanese college students who know the movies and know the logo, because for some reason Marvel, the logo, is now a brand thing here. What I like to do is I like to go up to people who have that logo, and I said, "Oh, which character do you like?" And they look at me like, "What are you talking about?"
It's just letters, MARVE and L. What character are you talking about?
I know. I once walked up to a guy with this Venom shirt, and I was like, "Wow, Venom! Do you know? Have you ever read the comic?" And he's like, "Comic? What are you?"
Yeah.
My daughter calls Venom Black Joker.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of apt. Patrick is on Twitter at Patokon, Patokon. Rumiko Takahashi's work is published in English by Viz Media. Let us know what you think. Email us at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Tweet us at deconcomics. Like our Facebook page or join our active Facebook group. We also invite you to join us on Patreon. Our tiers start at just $2 a month. Pledge at least $4 a month to get our Patreon-only series Spider-Man 1963 and Tim Catches Up with the MCU. Mulele and I also recorded a review of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which went up last Saturday. Go to patreon.com/deconcomics to join the fun. Can you think of one person you know who would enjoy what we're doing on deconstructing comics and critiquing comics? Send that person a text message right now and let them know about our show. Thanks. You can also help us get noticed by reviewing us on Apple or any other podcast source. Do your shopping at deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon so that we get a percentage of the sale. And share our episodes on your social media. We appreciate your support in bringing deconstructing comics, critiquing comics, and To the Bat Polls to a larger audience. Our theme is from bensound.com. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and Mulele and I will critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. Next week on Deconstructing Comics, the new Teen Titans. In the early 80s, Marv Wolfman and George Perez changed the direction of DC Comics with their seminal series. How does it stand up today? I'm joined by our patron Dylan to discuss the first 2 years of the new Teen Titans. That's next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.